All right, good evening. It's 6:33. We're a little late this evening. We had a lively discussion at our study session on bond scenarios. So thank you for attending the regularly scheduled board meeting for the Pasco School Board of Directors. Welcome back to those of you who joined us for our study session on bond scenarios. We have an action item on bond scenarios on the agenda this evening. And understand that while it may appear that the board is moving quickly on important matters, we have all had plenty of time to independently research these matters. We all have our own opinions on these matters, as you saw in our discussion in our study session this afternoon and last week, in the last couple months, discussing bond scenarios. But we've had plenty of research, like I said, and time to study the issues, ask questions, and obtain satisfactory answers from district staff. We all strive to understand each issue in its entirety and make the best decisions for all the students of Pasco and the taxpayers who support our school district. And board study sessions and board meetings are available on Charter Cable 191 channel and also on the school district YouTube page. Also, we have three board representatives, student board representatives seated here to my left. They're an important part of our decision-making process. We're happy to have them here on our board, get input, and we're also excited to have them go with us to our WASDA School Board of Directors state convention here in the next month. With that, we'll move on to the flag salute, and we have McLaughlin Middle School Principal Dominique Dennis here.
Good evening, Board President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and school board members. The representatives with me this evening are three of the hundreds of McLaughlin students who promote positivity and lead by example. Next week, they are launching a school-wide initiative called Dude, Be Nice. The Dude Be Nice project is a platform to inspire young people to build a positive community by recognizing people in a fun and creative way so that they know they are appreciated. In addition to launching this awesome school-wide activity, each of these ladies are involved in extracurricular activities. They all already have at least one high school credit and are members of the Principal's Honor Roll, which is earned by maintaining at least a 3.8 GPA. They will introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about the campaign, but first I'd like to recognize Maria Bice, who is the leadership advisor and also the family consumer science teacher at McLaughlin. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brisa Hernandez, and I'm in 8th grade, and I'm a part of the leadership team. Kindness, inclusiveness, and gratitude will always be at the core of the Dude Be Nice culture. This campaign is pro-positivity, a catalyst to spread all things good, instead of focusing on all things bad. In a strict society that believes in closed ideas, we must embrace all individuals. For this is the generation that will bring a positive reform in societal rules. Share love and kindness amongst all. Please join us at McLaughlin Middle School on October 17th through the 21st for our Dude Be Nice week, where we will be appreciating students and staff that truly showed the Dude Be Nice spirit. We will also have our Dude Be Nice retreat and assembly on October 31st, where leaders across the school will be trained on how to use the Dude Be Nice motto. Have a great rest of your night.
Hello, my name is Marlene Diaz. I'm part of the McLaughlin 8th grade leadership team. My job as being part of the Dude Be Nice committee is to create the school-wide assembly and reinforce positivity.
Hi, my name is Megan Matson. I'm in 8th grade and I'm a part of the Leadership Dude Be Nice committee. My job in the committee is to spread positivity around the school so everyone feels included. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
These awesome students come with really awesome families. If the families of these students could please stand so that we can give you a round of applause.
Thank you to the students and staff from McLaughlin for coming and sharing their leadership ideas and what they're doing in their schools with us. And we always invite the students that come here. You guys are already in your leadership classes. You're on your way towards continuing to be great leaders in your schools, I know. And we invite you in a couple of years, probably you guys are 8th grade, so in the next 3 years or so, to apply for a student board representative position on the school board, and come work with the school board that's here at that time. So thank you.
I think Dude Be Nice sounds like a creative idea.
It does.
That's a cool idea.
All right, next we have roll call.
Mr. Christensen,
Present.
Dr. Richardson,
Present.
Ms. Lankin,
Present.
Mr. Lehrman,
Present.
Ms. Phillips,
Present.
Mr. Neff,
Present.
Mr. Mendoza,
Present.
Ms. Lace.
Present.
And we have Ms. Dunnigan filling in here for Ms. Valerie Smith, so thank you for doing that for us. Next we have special recognition.
I'd like to welcome Mr. Shane Edinger to the podium, who has a special recognition for us this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and members of the board. Over the summer, when most Pasco School District employees were enjoying a well-deserved break, a dedicated team of librarians were busy making sure that textbooks and other new curriculum materials would be ready and waiting when students and their teachers returned to school this fall. Tonight, we'd like to invite the core team of librarians that took part in that to please join us up front. They are Christy Perez from Livingston Elementary, Elizabeth LeCompte from Pasco High School, Teresa Wiley from McLaughlin Middle School, Judy Hatchett from Chiawana High School, Doug Norby from Longfellow Elementary, Rebecca Franczyk from Chess Elementary, Mariana Polyuk from Curie Elementary, Corey Paulington from Captain Gray Elementary, Jerry Scholl from Markham Elementary, and Stephanie Post from Robinson Elementary. Now, this project started with the creation of all of the cataloging records for all of the new materials. Elizabeth LeCompte created each of those records, and that work actually started back in the spring. Now, materials were delivered to each building where Beacon's crews broke down and separated the pallets of materials, and then the librarians came in and built the kits for each teacher. Those kits were then delivered to classrooms while the librarians barcoded and inventoried the materials. The crews moved from building to building throughout the district to build those kits and then barcode and inventory the materials, because each resource was delivered in waves, starting with Senderos, the Spanish-English language arts materials, followed by Journeys, the ELA materials, and finally, the math curriculum materials. Now, in August, Stephanie Post created PowerPoint guides for all of the K-6 math and English language arts materials. We'd also like to recognize Mr. Roy McCoskey and his team. They once again spent this summer moving hundreds and hundreds of boxes through the district. The hard work that they put in every summer ensures that our schools are ready to go each fall, and that both our students and teachers have the tools they need to succeed. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you. We have pins for you.
Thank you so much for all your work. Once again, another piece of the puzzle that made this new curriculum in our district possible. So I would hate to even calculate the amount of man hours that has been spent on the new curriculum. It would be mammoth, but we are so grateful for all the work that everyone had to do this, and we saw pictures of what the librarians had to deal with, and we were very impressed with the organization that we saw in the pictures. Thank you.
Mrs. LeCompte's really not going to appreciate this, but I have to tell this story. So I popped into McGee Elementary just to visit and check in, and she was so committed that she was wearing a backpack with a toddler on her back, just busily visiting and her delivering all the curriculum materials. Like, it didn't even slow her down that she was doing some childcare that day. So it was impressive.
I know, I feel like we need like a standing ovation for all the work that has gone into that new curriculum.
Next, we have approval of the meeting minutes. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of September 27th, 2016.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the regular meeting minutes from September 27th, 2016. Those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Regular meeting minutes from September 27th, 2016 are approved. Next, we have the agenda review.
So I'd like to call the board's attention to item 10B, which is a 2017 bond action item presented by Randy Nunemaker. I'd also like to call the board's attention. We initially were requesting an executive session this evening, but we will no longer be requiring that.
All right, next we have audience comments. In just a moment, I'll invite you to the microphone to make a comment or pose a question to the board. We'll also have a portion for audience comment after each report, after the one report that we have up there and the two action items under agenda items number 9 and 10. We will allow for audience comment on those issues. During this general comment portion right here, please limit your responses to 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, a red folder, Ms. Thornton will hold up a red folder, and please try to wrap up your comments at that time. So the microphone's open.
Hello, Rebecca Oxford Hable, 5th grade teacher at Curie Elementary. I would ask the board to reconsider an extension at Curie Elementary.
And we all stand with her. We agree. That was Wendy Castaneda, 3rd grade teacher of Marie Curie Elementary. I also agree. I just wanted to add that we are currently overloading a bus to Robinson and Longfellow, and those are students that could be going to our school with this addition. I just wanted to add how crucial it was for kids to go to their home school in our huge, wonderful boundary. And our school is beautiful and we offer wonderful things, and I would hope that you would support the addition to our school. And I agree. I'm Sarah Winokur, 3rd grade.
And I'm Melissa Stevens, and I am 5th grade at Curie, and I also concur with that opinion. I also know the boundary struggles well, and my personal opinion is that when we continue to make adjustments to the forecasts that are made and that research that is done, we discredit the work that is done, and it becomes a Band-Aid that doesn't solve the problem over the long run. So please, we continue to grow at Curie, and we are overloaded. Please reconsider.
Hi, maybe alone, Marie Curie. In the over 25 years that I've worked with the Pasco School District, I've been in various buildings. I know what portables are like. Trying to, especially during inclement weather, trying to keep all the pathways clear. Sometimes as people try to do their best job, there's always critical spots that are missed. I've been victim of a lot of slips and falls, and in thinking of safety, which is one of our models there, we need to make sure that we take everything into consideration, not just cost, but safety. Thank you.
I'm Christy Grimm. I'm a 5th grade teacher and testing facilitator at Curie. I test over 700 children, at 800 children at this moment in time. And I would just like the board to reconsider as well the extra portables, so we're not busing kids out. So I don't have to sit there and spend time testing these kids knowing that I'm going to send them out. We don't even have room to welcome them into our building, and they're so excited when their little eyes light up and they come in and they see the school and they see the staff. So please reconsider adding the portable or the extension to Curie. Thank you.
Nathan Grimm, taxpayer, and construction manager by degree. I would just like the board to reconsider the Curie extension because there's a few points that I'm not sure that you guys have thought of. You have sunk costs, design, engineering costs, land acquisition costs that into that extension that you're not going to get back by not adding it. So both extensions at Curie and the high school are bang for your buck in capital facilities. I would add that the life cycle cost of portable facilities is double that of brick and mortar facilities. Understand it's a funding thing, and capital projects require funding, but you don't really save money in the long run by adding portables. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, and I think the board will have additional discussion on these items after we talk about item 10B on the agenda.
Okay, I'm Krista Peterson. I wanted to agree with all the Curie people about the portable situation. I'm not sure that I agree with adding onto Curie, but I agree with the portables, which is why we really need that fourth middle school. McLaughlin is mostly made up of portables, it feels like. I remember going there the first time and thinking it was just a sea of portables. And knowing that my kids in fact, the first time we got a classroom inside the building, it was 3 years in. And I told my son, you finally made it. You finally made it inside the building. And but I would also like to add that I know I mentioned earlier about the lunchroom situation. My daughter tends to go and hide in the library because she feels it is overcrowded in the lunchroom. But she also carries around her backpack all day, and I pick it up and I can barely pick it up. And I pick up a 4-year-old that weighs 43 pounds every day. So I just can't even imagine her carrying her backpack, her saxophone, her flute, and any of other various items that she has to carry around during the day with her the whole day, because I asked her about the lockers. On multiple occasions, she's like, it's just too much of a hassle. And so I would really like to encourage you guys to do put a fourth middle school on the bond.
Thank you for your comments. With no additional audience comments, we'll move on to board communications. Start with Dr. Richardson.
Thank you. So I visited Whittier Elementary School and met with Mr. Silva and the teachers and staff at Whittier, and visited one of their ECAP classrooms. It's in a portable outside, and was grateful for the feedback from the teachers there. I also attended the visit from Representative Walsh and Representative Neely, I believe, that visited the senior center and took a tour of that facility, and I'm excited for the early learning opportunities there that we'll be able to add to for our early learners in Pasco. I attended the Special Ed Community Forum, and at our table had lively discussion. Ms. Peterson was one of the ones at our table, and really thought they generated some great ideas that I hope the district will implement. One of the main ones being having a family connection meeting with all special ed children and their primary teachers before school started. I thought that was a fantastic suggestion, and hopefully we can implement that for the upcoming school year. And then finally, I attended the Early Learning Community Forum on the Spanish night. Also was impressed by the people at my table that we discussed ideas for early learning in Pasco, and was especially thrilled that two women that are both daycare providers, one of the first things they said together was that we have to find a way to increase education for the parents. And so I was thrilled that in that forum, that was one of the main topics we discussed, was how do we increase and support parents with their early learners, and hoping that next year in the fall we can implement something like Ready for Kindergarten or a similar program where we have a robust parent education, which we have some now. There's always a waiting list for the classes, as I understand, and like to see us eliminate the waiting list so that we are able to provide those services for all the parents that would like to attend.
I too was at the Early Childhood Education Forum, and very impressed with the ideas generated there. People that really, got to talk to two parents, one through an interpreter of the needs of our SPED kids and ways to better connect with the staff. And something very near and dear to my heart, as I have two children currently in the special education program here in Pasco School District, so could really relate and shed a few tears even that night. And so it was nice to hear from so many and contribute as a parent at that. Did I say that was early childhood education? That was SPED, sorry, 2 in SPED. I went to both. Both were great. Both were fabulous, and both had parents there. And the SPED is the one that I have 2 kids in. Yeah, anyway, it generated some fantastic ideas at both. Was really impressed. Was able to attend the Alice in Wonderland production that Edwin Markham Schools put on through the Missoula Theaters, their PALS thing. That was really fun. They did that at Chihuahua, and talked to lots and lots of community members in the last 2 weeks concerning, and teachers and principals concerning this upcoming bond, and trying to get a really good cross-section of needs and studying the area schools and those needs. So it's been a busy 2 weeks, but a productive 2 weeks.
I wanted to thank Mr. Nunemaker for the tour of both Ochoa and McLaughlin, and all the classrooms, and the whole school tour to check out the facilities and see what the whole thing was like. That was a great, just checking it out and seeing what, I mean, I've been to both schools several times and been in classrooms, but going into every classroom and just seeing what the whole makeup was a great opportunity. I too have spent a lot of time talking to community members and about the whole bond issue and what their expectations are, and so I thank everyone for their participation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So one of the big things for my communication, Chihuahua was able to be recognized as the 2016 ESD School of Distinction, and this is something that honors the staff, students, and school leaders who improve performance for all students over a sustained period of time in English language, arts, and math. So that was something really exciting that Chihuahua was able to receive, and we're hoping that becomes a continuous thing throughout the following years. And another thing, that the Chihuahua band, the marching band in color guard, placed 3rd in the cavalcade band. And that was a really awesome achievement. They also scored very high in 3 other categories, so that was really exciting for them. One thing I'd like to invite the board and the community to is Chihuahua's open house is coming up October 17th from 5 to 7 p.m. So that was something that could be really fun to go to kind of get to know more about the school of Chihuahua. And I also was able to attend the Alice in Wonderland play that was put on through the Edwin Markham students, and it was super awesome to see these little kids who this was pretty much the first play experience that they were able to participate in. So it was really fun to see that, and it's awesome. I think it's awesome that the opportunity was given to the students.
Can I just say one more thing? I also wanted to congratulate Mr. Satal, because he was mentioned on ABC News for his. They had a thing on, I think it was last night, where they presented him as being a great leadership member for the Hispanic community and all that he does for the Pasco High School and the students at Pasco High School.
Hello, everybody. These last 2 weeks were pretty active in our school also. We had a construction day event that I got to attend and with some of my classmates. And I got to meet new people, and I found out that one of our students wants to be a construction manager like me also, so that was pretty interesting. And we had an after-school event where we filled out our FAFSA forms, and we had help from our teachers, and we had a pizza, so that motivated our students to go. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I feel like this school year has gone really quickly, and that's the thing that all seniors say. And so it's barely October, but it's already October. So last week we had Jostens come in and talk about senior purchases, such as your gown, your cap, if you want a class ring, and so on. So today I had to make those purchases. So I mean, we're getting ready for graduation, and it's barely October. So I feel like I'm excited for things that are coming up, but at the same time it's bittersweet. And tomorrow we have our FAFSA night, so we're going to be applying to see if we can get, financial aid and stuff like that. So we're getting ready. Well, I'm already filling out college applications and scholarships. And we have our open house on Thursday, which is also career day. So we're going to have different colleges come in and talk to us about what they have to offer. And a new thing we're trying is tomorrow, so it's an early release, so we get out at 10:45, I think. And so there's this new thing that we're trying is, it's kind of like a committee where our school is getting different students to come in and work with teachers and talk to them and see or give ideas on what can make Pasco better. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we have our Friday Gravel Pit game, so we're going against Tijuana, so see how that goes. And I've also been lucky to go into drama rehearsals. They're working really hard for their upcoming play, and I think they're doing a really good job, so I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I also want to thank Mr. Nunemaker for arranging that visit to go walk through the McLaughlin and Ochoa Middle Schools. That was a very instructional or informational activity, and I would encourage other board members to do the same if you've not done that. We went after school so that we could go and see the facilities and just kind of compare the two facilities. And my observation, we have lots of space. Dr. Richardson mentioned there's lots of open space in McLaughlin, and there truly is. There's a lot of bigger rooms in McLaughlin that are probably not the best utilized. But it's interesting, the actual number of classrooms right now in both schools is pretty similar as far as general ed classrooms. Now there's other classrooms that McLaughlin has that makes it a little bigger. But very instructional. And Ms. Stingley, we didn't go to Stevens because we're planning to rebuild that school. Also was able to attend when Representative Neely and currently Representative Walsh came to the Pasco Senior Center to review that building. That's the first time they've been there, and thank those who were able to organize that. I think they were impressed and saw some things that we're trying to do that they will support us in the legislature this year. I'm confident in our ask for additional funding there. And finally, just wanted to comment on this Early Learning Forum and thank those who set that up. I know Mr. Bowles. I attended the night where it was Spanish speaking, and I don't remember the name of the gentleman who was the leader of that from Pasco High. Escalera, Omar. Okay, but did a great job. We had some good discussion, and I'm appreciative of those kinds of activities where we bring the community in and actually get their inputs. The table that I was sitting at, there was one lady who, I'm not sure she's attended a lot of these, and we kind of felt like we had to coax some information out of her, but I think once she got comfortable there, that I think it's valuable. You know, we hear from people that have a lot to say, but sometimes we have to make the effort to hear from those who aren't willing to speak up. And I appreciate that forum, but I'll tell you, I think the thing I learned most in that was they showed a little, maybe 6 or 7 minute video at the beginning of that, and it talked about the need for educating our children. And I'll tell you, the thing that impressed me the most is the role of a mother. I know we have lots of mothers working in our school district, and I would just encourage you, don't forget that your most important role is not here in this building or in the building you work in. Your most important role is with your children at home. So we appreciate the work you do here. Please keep it up, but at least for me, and I'm pretty confident all of our board would support you in your role as mother. So thank you.
I was able to stop by McLaughlin and also Livingston on pretty short notice, so thanks to Dominique, and also thanks to Mr. Rabb for giving me tours again on short notice. I also attended the SPED Community Forum and the Early Learning Forum, as other board members mentioned, both great events, first-time things, and hopefully we get some good long-lasting outcomes to come out of those meetings. I know that it's a short compression plan, work's done really quickly, but I know that important things and important ideas do come out of those forums that we hold for the community. And speaking of forums, we have a board community forum at Marie Curie STEM Elementary on October 20th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We haven't posted a topic yet with everything else that's been going on. One topic that I did hear earlier in the school year that board members were interested in was starting off talking about what went right and what went wrong, kind of a recap of how each school started up, and any comments from community or staff on what we could do better to improve next year. So kind of lessons learned there. And I also invite, that might not be the whole forum there, that might be a part of the time. Invite the board to talk to me or send me an email if they have any ideas. Also open that up to the community. If you have ideas, hot topics that you'd like us to discuss at that community forum, let me know. And we will post the topics to be discussed in the next 2 days there. Attended the CHS football game on Friday, which was my first football game that I attended this year. So that was a big win for them, and I know they have a couple other big games coming up, and also excited to go see a Pasco game this year. So I won't be able to make it to the gravel pit this weekend. I'm going to be out of town. It's I have a milestone birthday for my grandmother, so we're going to be out of town, but I will go see Pasco also. Excited for all of our student athletes and the extracurricular activities that all of our students are able to participate in. Thank you.
So Mr. Funfar from the City of Pasco asked, there are partners that help us with the video recording and posting of our board meetings, asked that I announce there's a community opportunity for you to hear the candidates for the Superintendent of Public Instruction will be here tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at the Pasco Police Regional Training Facility, which is on the corner of First and Clark. The address is 204 West Clark. So again, that'll start at 6 o'clock tomorrow. It'll be the Superintendent of Public Instruction candidates and Attorney General candidates tomorrow. So a great opportunity for us in this region to hear from some candidates for some leadership positions for our state. Pasco High School also received a School of Distinction Award, and that will be presented to them Thursday night at 6:15 at Open House. So we're very proud of both of our high schools, and we have a number of other award-winning schools that over time have won the School of Distinction Award. So they're added to a list of very distinguished schools that we're very proud of. I also wanted to invite the community and the board to VIP Day, which is on October 13th at Ochoa Middle School. Thank you, Ms. Ramirez, for hosting. If you haven't RSVP'd and would like to attend, please don't hesitate to email me directly at mwhitney@psd1.org, and I'll make sure that you get RS on the list. We're looking forward to showcasing Ochoa Middle School. And I also will be at the gravel pit game. I'm not 100% sure how to work this out in terms of where to sit, so probably half and half. But I'll get that worked out. I'm super excited to watch our student athletes as well, and just have lots of gratitude to the teachers and coaches who prepare our kids academically and for extracurricular activities.
All right, next we'll move on to agenda item 9A, reports and discussion.
Do you have one of those half and half sweatshirts, Miss Whitney?
I might try to work something up by Friday.
Board President Lehrman, Ms. Whitney, fellow board members, I am here tonight to report on the WASDA Legislative Assembly that was held in Spokane 2 weeks ago, September 23rd and 24th. I talked a little bit about it last week. All right, I guess I got to use the mouse. All right. So the purpose of the WASDA Legislative Assembly is to put together positions so that when those who are representing WASDA, the government relations personnel from WASDA, are on the Hill during session, if some legislation comes up, they know which position to take, whether to support it or to help modify it so that it is more favorable to WASDA. Again, WASDA gets together annually to review previous positions, makes any changes to those that are necessary, and then adopts new positions that are submitted by school districts. So we had an opportunity to submit legislation this year. I don't think we submitted one. We chose to combine with Yakima on one that would use numbers from, rather than, and I don't remember what it was. I'm sure somebody does, free and reduced lunch forms for our schools that have lunch for everybody. I can't even remember the name of that program. But anyway, rather than duplicating the effort to get the number of students that qualify for certain programs, we would just use those numbers. So there were a number of positions that we reviewed, actually before I get there. So that was on Saturday. But on Friday, we had some, as part of this assembly, they get some people to come in and talk about what we might see at the upcoming session. So this year it was held in Spokane, so Senator Andy Billig, who is a senator from the Spokane area, and the Representative Bob McCaslin from the surrounding area were there and came and talked about some of the things to expect. And of course, the big thing this year is going to be funding again. McCleary is still alive and well. The court's been weighing in on this as well, so this year we're hoping to see some action here. We're not sure what exactly is going to come of this. Let's see, we have a WASDA regional meeting this Thursday where I would expect I will see some of the other local representatives from their school boards, legislative representatives. We talked about getting together and maybe putting together kind of a local position to go and talk to our local legislators to help give some direction in what they should be doing as far as addressing McCleary. So we'll see what comes of that. Additional speakers, there was a panel discussion relating to some of the challenges that we're going to see in upcoming legislation. Of course, some of this relates to McCleary as well. Their feeling, generally, all the members of the panel said the big thing is going to be compensation. That's going to be the challenge. That's the biggest chunk of the increase in funding is going to be for compensation. One of the things they did talk about was statewide bargaining, hoping to alleviate some of the pressure that are put on school districts and local bargaining for salaries and for benefits, healthcare benefits and so forth. I'm not sure, there was mixed feelings on that in this report, that some of the people felt like that relieves some of the pressure. It puts it in a place where we're really dependent on the legislature to do the right thing, and we can see that sometimes that's a challenge. And then, of course, new revenue, meaning taxes, was part of the discussion as well. We also had an opportunity to hear from the candidates for some of the state offices, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Aaron Jones and Chris Rakedahl were both there. And I believe they answered some questions there, and there was some questions submitted, and they were able to write answers and post those. And WASDA posted those, and I believe I forwarded you guys that link probably late last week. I will check if I didn't. I know I forwarded you something, and that may have been on McCleary, but I would encourage you to take a look, get to know these candidates, make a decision. They both have strengths and both have weaknesses. So, also, the candidate for Commissioner of Public Lands, Hillary Franz, was there. She's one of the candidates, as well as Steve McLaughlin. He was not able to make it. Apparently, his flight was either canceled or delayed, or somehow he didn't make it. He was planning to be there, but was not able to make it. So they both have comment in this on the WASDA website, and I will forward you the link to those if you don't already have that. Statistics from the Assembly. So just for your information, okay, so there was about 180 attendees representing over 90 school districts there. We have 295 school districts in the state. We did meet the quorum requirements to be able to move forward. We added 14 standing legislative positions, and what a standing position is one that's gone to Assembly for 3 consecutive years and been voted on or approved as a WASDA legislative position. Once it's been there 3 times, it becomes standing, and it does not get removed or modified without action being taken. So we added 14 standing positions. One of the challenges WASDA is facing right now on the legislative committee is there are a bunch of standing positions. It's becoming more and more crowded, so some people think that's a challenge. So they're trying to combine these different positions where there's common themes in there. They've combined them. So 7 of these were amended, combined with others, and then eliminated 3 of the standing positions. There was also 38 new positions voted on, not all necessarily new this year. They could have been submitted last year or the year previous to that, but they haven't met the full 3 continuous years to become standing positions. Of those 38 positions submitted, 34 passed and 4 did not pass. So you can see at that rate, we're adding about 10 a year. Pretty soon it's going to be fairly good sized. And so just a preview, in a couple of weeks, I think, is it our next board meeting? Do you know, Ms. Whitney? So what we want to do is talk about some things that we as a district, some positions we want to take, that we want our legislators to kind of champion, or at least when these things come up, and I think both of these will in this next session, that they know, that they hear from us and know what we want them to do. One of them that we've talked about earlier today in our study session was this school construction funding, additional funding for the K-3 class size reduction, the Super SCAP grant that they're calling it. We want them to know that we want them to continue that. We need help as a district, or we would appreciate some assistance in reducing our class sizes, or getting the classrooms we need to be able to reduce those class sizes to the state mandated level. Also, we've talked about assessments and things that we can do to eliminate or streamline some of the assessments. So we'll talk about this in a study session, I believe, in 2 weeks. And then we can also talk about any funding, if anybody has any ideas for increasing funding or increasing efficiency so we don't need so much funding in the school district. So, and that's all I have for a report. Anybody have any questions that I can answer?
I just want to thank you, Mr. Christensen, for attending and representing our district, and for taking the time to make sure our positions were heard at the Legislative Assembly.
I'll just tell you, I filled out at the end, you get a chance to prioritize, and I picked for us, so I hope I did a good job. I can't even tell you which ones I picked.
Didn't we already discuss this and kind of to narrow down what we wanted and which direction we were going, and already voted on this? Is this different?
So what we did talk about, I think what you're referring to, Amy, is we wanted to get a position, a specific position for additional funding. Basically, it was an ask, a request for additional funding for the pre-K center, or modifying the senior center. So we did pass that one so that we could get that in, get that request in early, so that we're hopefully at the head of the queue when it comes to asking for funding for community projects. We did at that time talk about some potential positions, and I think the assessment and the super SCAP were those, but we didn't take action on those. Those are not critical at this time, like the funding was, so we've put those off now. Hopefully we'll have more time next week or next meeting to talk about those.
Okay, I thought we completed those and we were in agreement with going forward with those.
Well, I think we talked about them,
Okay.
but we did not take action on those. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. I'd just echo what Dr. Richardson said, and thank you for your service as our ledge rep. School board members across the state, across the nation are always advocating for more local control, and we really believe in local control, but we also understand that there are state politics and mandates that come into play with the decisions we make. So we know that we got to cultivate relationships at the legislative level and advocate for our students. So appreciate that work. Next, we have item 10A, which is a superintendent entry plan. Ms. Michelle Whitney will present that to us.
Board President Scott Learman, members of the board, I'm here tonight to obtain board approval for the superintendent entry plan. The purpose of a superintendent's entry plan is to summarize the work priority and product and the progress of a superintendent's work over time. The particular superintendent entry plan I brought to you tonight is organized into phases. Phase 1 summarizes the work that was done during the 2015-16 school year and builds on that work in phases 2, 3, and 4 for the remainder of the school year, and will then focus pre-planning for the following year. After board approval, this entry plan will be placed on the district's website, where it will be monitored, very similar to the way that the deputy superintendent's successor transition plan was monitored last year. Just as a reminder to the board, this plan was presented to you in a study session last board meeting, and like I said, it's a multi-page document under 5 broad categories that has a phase-in approach. So here you can see the category of student achievement. Phase 1 categorizes the work that was done in 15-16. Phase 2 prioritizes the work that would be focused on through July to September, etc. And this is the status key that you would see over time on the district's website. A green dot means completed, green arrow means ongoing, red means not yet initiated, and yellow means that it's been initiated and not complete. So I'm here this evening to obtain board approval for the entry plan.
Thank you for all the work you've done here, Ms. Whitney. Is there any questions or discussion from the board?
We love this plan. It's great. It really helps us to know what's going on and what's being accomplished, and it really marries well with our new superintendent evaluation that we are implementing. And so we just really appreciate the work that you put into this, so that we know what's going on. And I'm grateful that the community is going to be able to view this as well.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, this will be posted online.
Correct.
Right? So this will be an instrument that everybody can use and track and monitor the way things are going in our district, and I think this will be very helpful, not only for us as a board, but for our community as well, to see the work that's being done. So thank you for your work in putting this together.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm supportive of this. I want to point out 2 key actions that were what I would, having only been on the board for less than a year, what I would have preferred or liked to see in the school district, I think, is part of your key actions. 1 was a change in culture in our school district, and 2 would be the implementation of curriculum, which was a huge impetus to the events of last year. So those 2 aspects, key action items, are front and center right on the entry plan. Those 2 things have been mostly done or have certainly been started to be implemented. And I think those are the two things that I think were of primary importance to our community and schools. And that's been started. And I'm also happy that this will be posted. People can look at the progress, and most people I've talked to have been able to see the progress already with the culture change and actually having curriculum that has been implemented. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitney. So we'll open it up before I entertain a motion from the board. If we have, and we won't comment, we won't have the audience comment or question Ms. Whitney here, but if you have any questions or comment to the board on this action item, the microphone's open. All right, do we have additional board discussion? I would entertain a motion on this action item.
I move to accept the superintendent entry plan as presented.
I'll second the motion.
There is a motion and a second to accept the superintendent entry plan as presented. Ms. Dunnigan, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Dr. Richardson,
yes.
Ms. Lankin,
Yes.
Mr. Lehrman,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to action item 10B. We've had good discussion on this issue. We had good discussion this afternoon in our study session starting at 4:30. We had some community comment that all of that is available or will be available on Charter Channel 191 or on the district's YouTube page. We've also had discussion on this at our last board meeting, as well as in previous board meetings. And after this afternoon's study session, there were three final options that are brought to the board right now, and what we're looking for is to take action on one of these options.
So Board President Mr. Lehrman, Superintendent Whitney, and board members, the district brings before you agenda item 10B to confirm a bond scenario for the 2017 bond election. The board selected a bond scenario on May 24th, 2016. There were three options from the study session to be considered. They were option C, option D, and option E. And based on board direction from the last meeting, final determination of the bond scenario is requested.
So let's, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up for discussion from the board. Again, everything we talked about this afternoon will be available online or on TV. If each board member would like to go and talk about their preferred option here and their thought process, how they got to where they are with their thought process. And you've heard other community members speak this afternoon, also in community audience comment just now. Go ahead and talk about anything you'd like. And we won't have a debate here between board members, but we will one last time talk about how we got to where we are.
Randy, do we have this information on our computers at all? Is it only right here or in hard copy?
No, my understanding, you should have these on your computer.
Okay, so these haven't been changed at all from the previous ones. They've just chosen the three that we want to bring
Correct.
back. Okay.
So as each board member chooses their favorite option, we'll pull it up on the screen there for the public to see, and we'll start. Does anybody want to volunteer to start?
Hi. I'm happy to start.
Okay, we'll start with Dr. Richardson.
I'll try to summarize and be brief, because like you mentioned, we've had extensive discussion today and last board meeting that people can watch. So I first want to recognize that I don't believe this happens very often, that a board in a district would reevaluate a proposed bond. And so I want to recognize some people to realize that I don't think that happens very often, and that based on new data we have, I'm extremely pleased that we were willing to do that, to relook at the new information that we were given, and try to meet the needs of the community, feedback we received, the change in assessed value predictions that we received that were very promising for Pasco, and in my mind supported a more aggressive bond to have some more foresight and be more aggressive in our facilities in the bond that we brought forth. So okay, thank you, Mr. Maggart. So this option C, I like a lot. Now, I think the audience will recognize that the three options, the main difference is whether or not we add an elementary school 17 or a fourth middle school. And in my mind, it's absolutely a slam dunk that a fourth middle school, I would much rather have that on the bond than one more elementary school. And that's for a number of reasons. Mostly the difference in our middle school sizes, also the potential that Mr. Christensen mentioned as far as additional funding that will likely be provided across our state with Super SCAP funding for additional elementary schools, which I think we will receive, and then for endless other reasons. I think this bond option is a palatable price. It's and I'm supportive of these projects. I think our discussion last week was, or 2 weeks ago, was a little bit hasty in axing certain, like the Curie project and the Chiawana project. Personally, I thought that was somewhat hasty to just eliminate those. Obviously, our challenge is balancing having these mega schools in Pasco, which we're just in a very difficult bind, versus providing a good experience for our current students. And so we need to balance that, have foresight, take care of our current students, and balance all those things for a bond that our community will support. So I'm supportive of this option with the addition of Curie classrooms and 6 classrooms to Chiawana. The 24 classrooms, what I heard from a lot of community members was that school will permanently be a school for 3,000 students. However, right now they're in a very, very difficult bind. I mean, it's crazy the number of teachers on carts. I think someone mentioned that Curie or one of these other schools has 3 teachers on carts. I think Chiawana has like 15 to 20. I mean, and the 18, something like that. So to just do nothing at Chiawana, I think is not an option. And so I would like to see this option, add the Curie classrooms back on, add 6 classrooms to Chiawana, which balances, in my mind, not having mega schools if we added 24 classrooms to them, but also provides some relief and wouldn't delay too unnecessarily a third high school down the road. And so that would be my preference for our proposed bond.
Ms. Phillips?
Can I see the other options? So this is D, and can I just see the last one just for reference? And this is E. So E has 2 elementary schools and redoes Stevens, plus the other things. Can we go back to the other one before that? And this one has the 2 elementary schools rather than the one that that Aaron did. I'm sorry, my brain isn't working correctly, but that it does not have the second elementary school. We desperately need a second elementary school. Our elementary schools are simply they're just overcrowded at too big of a rate. I just don't feel like we can adequately put in only one elementary school. I feel like this, I mentioned before I would love to have and this is something that one of our people in the community said, that they would like to have 2 bonds. You can run 2 bonds at once, and it would be great to have one with the 2 elementary schools and Stevens redo, and then one with just the middle school. That way our community can do all or none. And I really like that idea. It wasn't very popular, but I feel like it marries well with what we desperately need and what the community desperately wants. But I feel like right now our middle schools have by far the biggest classes in the Tri-Cities. Many of the other middle schools in Tri-Cities have 300 plus per grade. Ours has 600 plus. I realize that the space issue isn't as hard, but hearing from the community, it's difficult for these adolescents to, as crowded as it is. And McLaughlin is significantly overcrowded. Stevens and Ochoa are not right now. They're pretty much at capacity, but by splitting into 4 middle schools, we would have close to 700 kids per middle school, which is a much more manageable rate for our different middle schools. So I'm really in favor of this one. I do not want to build another middle school that's a capacity of 1,100. So I want this one. If we build the smaller middle school, it's $10 million less, and it puts this bond closer to that 100 million mark. I mean, this is difficult. It is a big tax. It would reduce it a little bit. It's a big ask, but listening to the community and talking to people from all different walks of life, I've just heard middle school, and even though we only have 6th and 7th and 8th grade, and the other schools don't, Kennewick currently has 5 middle schools, and Richland has 4, is about to have 4, and they're smaller than us, and Kennewick's a little bigger than us, and we only have 3, and it causes problems for sports and extracurricular, which we as a board have really supported. Those kids have to go to 5:30 a.m. sports because they can't get there because there's not enough room. And that eliminates some of our kids to be able to even participate in those sorts of things. And so I feel like we could put a new high school on here. I feel like we could put another middle school or another elementary school on top of this. Even with this, we're still going to have big elementary schools. But I really don't want to build another middle school at 1,100, so I'd support this one at a lower level.
So on option D, you have a smaller elementary school. Elementary at 17, you have only a 550 capacity school. As I said earlier in the session, I mean, it's great to have a small school, but we have never opened an elementary school since I have been on the board where we've had 500 kids at an elementary school. I mean, it's just not, in Pasco, it's just not an option. I mean, it's great if we can keep building schools every year, but for Pasco, it hasn't been an option. And I mean, we just can't do it in Pasco. And when you look at that, when we have the state option, the state matching funds, even if that option up there is the state matching is only 22% when you look at the middle school. So for me, we need the elementary schools. So for me, option E, when you look at doing the 2 elementary schools, is the best option, I think. For us at this time, I think we need the elementary schools, and then we can do the support group from the group to look and see, and then run another bond in the next 17 or 18 to do another middle school if that's what the task force and the community wants to do. I mean, we can do the options and get the do the planning and do that. But we do need elementary schools. I mean, that's where our capacity is in students. I know McLaughlin is big. I mean, my kids went to McLaughlin when it was big, so, and my grandchildren, so I know that McLaughlin is big, but we need elementary schools.
So our board reps aren't obligated to say anything, but I'll give each of you guys a chance to say something if you'd like. Would you like to say anything, Mr. Neff?
Sure, I guess I'll say something. So I think, well, clearly we can see this as a pretty complicated but important issue. And I'd say that I'm probably most for the option C, the first option, based on the fact that I feel like it's a pretty good balance between not having an overly aggressive bond that might turn away voters for approving the bond. But it also helps to really solve the middle school issue, which is really, I think, one of the biggest issues that we face, just based on quality of education that students are receiving. So I think the option C would probably be the best option to go for the bonds.
I agree with also with the fourth middle school, and seeing the principal from Stevens, it kind of made me feel bad, but it's not really the staff that are the ones with it, the problem. I feel like it's the school that if it's too big, like when I saw these 3 girls here that were leaders, maybe there's more leaders out there, but that school's just too big to get them out there. Maybe there's more, but we don't see that. I don't really know how to say this into words, but there's probably somewhere out there that there's, let's say the dude, what was that called?
Dude be nice.
Yeah, dude be nice. What if there's something else out there that we don't know about, but that school's just too big to see it? So that's why I agree with fourth middle school.
I also agree with another middle school, but I'm kind of between options C and D, because I agree with Evan. Option C is more of a compromise. It's having such a huge bond. I think it's gonna scare away the voters. But we do need elementary schools. Everything's a priority, but I don't think it's such a big issue as the middle school, because middle schools it's the stage of a children's life where there's a lot of changes and there's a lot of getting used to, and overcrowdedness is a huge deal with students, and not being able to walk around comfortably or join sports or make the teams. I think that's really hard on kids. So I definitely think we need a new middle school. It looks like all the bonds have Stevens project on there, so it doesn't really matter which one we pick as far as if Stevens going to get a renovation. So that's good. But I think we need to build a middle school. So options C and D have that. And if we want to go big, I'm a person who likes to go big or go home. So option D is a really big one. It might be a little tough right now, but in the long run, I think that's going to be the better result.
My preferred option would be option E. For many of the same reasons that we discussed in the previous session. My concern, again, we've had a task force that's given us some information, and I think when I look at the numbers, this clearly is the option that to me makes the most sense. I understand it would be wonderful to have another middle school. It would be wonderful to have another high school and 5 more elementary schools. But I do believe, well, I like Dr. Richardson's comment, we need to be aggressive. We need to be doing things. And I think this is a $67 million bond, $68 million bond, which is pretty big. It's pretty aggressive. Fortunately, we've had a change in tax rate that will, to a degree, minimize the impact of this bond. When we talk about middle schools, this bond builds a new middle school. I have not heard anybody say that, why are we rebuilding Stevens? All the commentary I've heard on this has been positive. I think if we need to find something to rally around, let's rally around this. Let's rally around the fact that we're building a new middle school. We're replacing a school that needs to be replaced. In doing so, we will be adding some middle school capacity. Part of the challenge with McLaughlin is it's a big school. It has lots of students. Some of those issues can be addressed by redoing boundaries. Now, I've been through this. It is not pleasant. Last year at Angelo, when we talked about taking some of those students out of there because the school was going to be big and putting them in another school, they said, no, we want to stay here. We'll take the big school as opposed to realigning boundaries and going to another school. And I suspect we would get somewhat of the same feedback from McLaughlin. But when we get Stevens rebuilt, we can take some of the students, as was mentioned now, there's up where I live, up in the Desert Plateau area, there's people who don't like the fact that they have to take their kids to McLaughlin and then take their kids to Pasco High School. And with a little bit bigger school, we could potentially bring some of that area down into Stevens. Some of that's in Stevens now, and utilize some of that capacity and build some relief into McLaughlin. Again, we look at these numbers. Ochoa is 115,000 square feet. Well, if we look at these numbers, that's an 11,000 1100 student building. Would you like 1,100 students in your building, Ms. Ramirez? Yeah, it would be a little crowded, wouldn't it? So I'm not sure that this is that it's an 1,100 student middle school. So I think when we look at these and think, gosh, if we build 92,000 square feet, it's really an 800 or 1,000 student school. It probably isn't. It really is a smaller school. But my concern, if we simply say, look, we've got to have another middle school now, we do it at the expense of our elementary schools. We will be back here in 2 years or 4 years saying, wow, how did we get to this point where we have 900 students in our elementary schools? It's really nice that we've got 700 or maybe even 800 in our middle schools, but we've got elementary schools now, several of them with 800 students, several more with 700. And to build one elementary school now and to think that that's going to alleviate that for 2 or 4 years, I think is not the right direction to go. We talk about Super SCAP money. That Super SCAP money is available, well, hopefully becomes available, but in order to take advantage of that money, you have to have some additional capital funding. This option here, it puts us in a position to add another elementary school without Super SCAP funding. If the Super SCAP funding comes in, we can use some of this money to take it to another project, which maybe that project is some advanced planning on a middle school. Again, we're putting together this task force that will do some long-term planning. And if the conclusion of that task force is that we need another middle school and we want to advance that middle school, we could take some of that money and utilize it in advanced planning for that middle school so that we can get out of the gate even earlier like we're doing now with Elementary School 16. So I think this option has a lot of appeal for a lot of reasons, and I would vote for this option. Now let me just say one thing. Ms. Aragon, you've talked about additional classrooms to Curie. I like that idea. I much prefer that over portables. I will tell you though that I'm not in favor of mega schools. Your school, I would say, would be an exception because it is at least the way it's currently configured. You're 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you're not, you don't have 7 grades in there. That one I would be willing to, I think is worth looking at. And I think in the other, that was like a $1.6 million add to this. Now that wasn't a recommendation of the task force. That was one thing that we as a board said, look, we've got 2 of our most crowded elementary schools are on the east side. We've got Robinson at 800 and Curie's at 800 and Whittier's at 600, and we do not have any space over there. In fact, Whittier and Robinson, they're portable city. They've got a lot of portables now. So we added that because we need some capacity over there. Now, of course, we can drag in portables to Curie, which I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense when we've got the infrastructure to put that there. And I think we've got match capacity that we could utilize or take advantage of a full match on that additional space. So I would be in favor of adding that in if the other board members wanted to. As far as Chiawana goes, adding classrooms to Chiawana, the configuration of Chiawana, I would say we either do 12, we do 24, or we do 0. Just the way it's structured, we've got 12 classrooms on one side, we've got 12 classrooms, 2 different spots on the other side. And to bring in a construction crew to only do 6 of those classrooms without doing the full 12 while you've got everything there, I think would be a mistake. Or we can go to the other side and do the 12. And for you that don't have the picture, I apologize, but I think, to me, to get the most bang for our buck, if we do anything at Chiawana, and again, I'm not a fan of portables. I recognize we've got an issue there with Chiawana, but I would support that if my other board members did.
I also would echo a lot of what Mr. Christensen said there. I prefer option E. I really value the work that the task force did. I know they're not the only input into what we did, but they studied all the issues. I feel like we've studied all the issues also. When I look at the numbers from where our match money comes from, yes, it's a K-8 bucket, but it's calculated in two different ways. It's calculated on the capacity we have for 7th and 8th graders, and another portion of it's calculated on the capacity we have for kinder through 6th graders. We have 140,000 square feet of match that we can get, and almost all of that is due to our overcapacity at the K-6 level per that OSPI calculation. Their current estimate for what we should be housing in our elementary schools is 8,729, and we currently have an enrollment of 10,128, so we're over capacity in our elementary schools by almost 1,400 students today. And when we look forward 5 years from now, we don't show much growth at the elementary school. So if we do nothing or do part of this, we're still over capacity by 1,400 students. If I look at the same thing for the middle school, the calculation shows that we're 270 students under capacity for our district-wide middle school space. 5 years from now, they show a little more growth than we get at the elementary level, but they'll show that in 5 years we'll be, with our current capacity, 25 students over-enrolled in our brick-and-mortar middle schools. So I don't see it in the numbers. I know that some people here will say the numbers don't matter, it's the experience. So I'm hoping, like I said, I like option E here. It does everything that the task force recommended. If after this bond passes or doesn't pass in February, I really feel it's important we stand up a task force again and they look at all the issues. You know, I've heard what people have said about having a 4th middle school. I respect those comments. I also heard comments about adding Curie back in. I think that's part of a task force conversation. Rebounding middle schools, part of a task force recommendation and analysis. But when I look at this, I think it shows that we really need elementary school capacity, so I like option E. Like Mr. Christensen, I could see adding Curie back on. I don't know that we have the capacity there to get a full match. It looks like we have 2,000 square feet left. That's an estimate, of course, but if another board member made a recommendation or made a motion to add that on, I would probably support it as well.
So can I ask just a clarifying question here, because I didn't address this, but I'm looking at option E. I can tell you, while I recognize the need to build bigger elementary schools, I think a 72,000 square foot elementary school is too big. I don't think, I would not build one any bigger than Franklin, and I'm trying to find the numbers for Franklin.
I think one of the reasons they built that bigger because they actually improved a lot of things at Franklin. When I visited both, and Ms. Aragon shared this, she showed me the things that were significantly better. One would be the art room. They had an amazing art room at Curie with a kiln that Franklin does not have. And actually, I don't think Franklin even has an art room right now. So they actually made improvements. They added a space where it could be added onto, and to me they were all beneficial features that were added to Franklin to make it much more, a much better experience for the students. And while we're looking for the size of Franklin, I had one additional question. I think Chiawana, the way that the additions are configured, the north ones are grouped in 6s. There's one that's a 6, one that's a 6, and the south one's a 12. So we could do a 6, an 18, a 6, a 12, an 18, or a 24. But I would support a 12 as well. But there are 3 classrooms on top of each other on the north in 2 places, and the south one is 6 classrooms on top of each other. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then I want to mention one more thing that I don't think we've discussed in any other meeting, and this is one of the main reasons I think we can wait on the elementary school, and that's even if we don't get the Super SCAP money, which I think we will, we could run another bond in a couple years just with more elementary schools. But we haven't mentioned that we are going to open a facility in the fall that will open up some classrooms at some of our elementary schools. One would be at Whittier, which I just visited. Their ECAP classroom would be moved to our early learning center, and there's other ones that depending on how many classrooms we ultimately have, which are mostly going to be those central east, the ones that are closest, that will free up space at a lot of those central and east elementary schools, while the elementary school number 16 will free up the space in our most crowded elementary schools, which are on the west side and where the most growth is. There's some growth on the east, but not nearly as rapidly as in the west. So for that reason as well, I think that buys us a little bit of time, and why I think we should make the middle school a priority now. We're going to be opening up some space that will relieve some of the pressure at the central middle schools with the Early Learning Center. We add Curie classrooms on here, which adds a little bit of space over there in East Pasco where you're overcrowded, and then we get the middle school taken care of. If we don't get Super SCAT money, which I think we will, we run another bond in a couple of years with some elementary schools, if we're still in that position.
Thank you, Mr. Nunemaker. I'll allow for additional board comment in a few. I'll open it up to the public right now. Please address the microphone if you have questions or comments for the board, and state your name and affiliation with the district.
I'll go first. I'm right here. I'm Meredith Taylor. I have kids at Franklin. One thing I haven't heard mentioned in the last two board meetings is passing time. Middle schools have passing time. So we're talking about elementary schools that are overcrowded versus middle schools that are overcrowded. In an elementary school, you rarely have a big flood into hallways or out by portables or wherever it may be. You have classrooms moving in a class. I'm sure there are other times when it's chaotic to have I'm not saying huge elementaries are great or overcrowded elementaries are great, but in middle school, you have kids getting out of classes at the same time all over the building. You have kids in hallways and things happen, and it's a safety concern. And I can see how, I mean, I know a lot of people who are moving to not go to MAC. They are homeschooling to not go to MAC. They are driving their kids to schools in other districts to not go to MAC because of these kinds of issues, along with the extracurriculars, it's just a hard time of life, and I know that's been said a lot, but I think there's more to it than just we have X number of children too many in elementary and X too many in middle school. It's more complex than that. I don't really like it, children reduced to numbers. That being said, I wanted to know if you knew the number of how many sixth graders we have currently in the district.
I believe it's approximately 13, it's over 1,300. That was the last number I saw.
And how many fifth graders?
Don't remember.
Probably about the same.
You have to count numbers. If you're not going to open even Stevens, even if it's a bigger capacity and we can eventually send some kids from MAC, you have to count how many kids down 2020, probably down to second grade. How many second graders do we have? They all have to go somewhere. It's not, I mean, a bond's not quick. It's not quick to pass one. It's not quick to build a middle school. So Stevens would be 2020. Even on the other option where there's a fourth middle school, it's 2022. If we don't do it now and we do it in a couple years, it's probably 2024, 2026. It's just got to be more long-term than slapping a Band-Aid on a gusher. My other concern is the task forces. I think it's great that we have task forces. I worry about the timing of them. I signed up to be on the next one, and I'm thinking by the time we run another bond in a couple years, what we study in that task force is not going to be relevant. I'll still do it, but it's not going to be relevant. Just as the task force that met almost 2 years ago is maybe not currently relevant. Stevens, still a relevant issue, and the elementary school is still relevant. But I just think it's a lot of time to pass. And we do a lot of things that seem like we're running a bond now, we're going to have a task force for the next one right now. It just doesn't make sense. Anyway, that's my thought. I think I kind of like the two bonds, the middle school and a separate one. My only concern with that is that people will vote for the one that is cheaper, not everyone, but some people will. And so if the middle school is the cheaper one, you might end up with not passing this bond. So they would either maybe need to be equivalent in price or something. I mean, I kind of like that idea because it's more like you can vote for what you want, but I think there are some pitfalls there. Anyway, that's my thought. I like, now I can't remember what the letter is. Not this one. C or D?
C.
C.
So that's excellent feedback, Ms. Taylor. Believe it or not, I just saw two 13-year-old brothers, twins, yesterday that are homeschooling right now. And I didn't even think of that the students that are either homeschooling or going to other districts, which I also know families that are doing that we could regain those students. They live here and they're literally frustrated beyond having to travel to take their kids somewhere else. We could regain those and add them to the numbers, and I don't know how many there are, but I know many just myself, and I still didn't even think of that. So that was an excellent point.
Looking at the growth forecasts for our middle schools, the baseline forecast is the higher. The low growth forecast is if growth is lower. And currently, that was done in 2015 with the kids that are currently in elementary school and the projected move-ins. And the very first year on the most aggressive growth plan that we have is 2,587 middle school students, and this year we had 2,625 middle school students. So even already in 1 year, we're up about 35, 36 from the more moderate one, not the lowest one. And in 2020, that puts us at 400 plus middle school students already in 2020. And we're already ahead of that. So that's an interesting fact from the stuff we've had given.
I also wanted to mention, you mentioned splitting up, how some people might vote for the smaller bond, and I think that's true. And not only that, but I feel like that pits different parts of Pasco against each other. And I just really dislike that idea that, well, everyone in West Pasco would vote for the fourth middle school. And I hope those that are informed would realize that Stevens needs to be rebuilt and vote for that as well. However, I don't know if that would occur. I could see people in other parts saying, well, we'll vote for this because that helps us, but we're not going to vote for that. I don't want to pay for that. That doesn't affect me. And so I think tying them together really shows that this is about Pasco. Even if it doesn't affect your child, we're trying to do what's right for everyone, and let's support each other and not pit each other against each other.
I didn't want to interrupt. My name's Sarah Curie, third grade. I just want to say thank you very much for reconsidering or even mentioning Curie and the additions, because you're not thinking about future growth, you're thinking about current growth, because we do have 3 classrooms on carts. We have a resource room and a teacher's lounge right now. So those additions would be awesome, and they would provide additional office space for staff who are in closets to teach children. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely supportive of that. That would add about $1 to $3 million, depending. I don't think we'd have any match on that. I'd still support it. The Chiawana one would add, depending if we did 6 or 12 classrooms, $3 to $6 million, and that would make option C roughly $85 million, which I think is a good number, less than 90, and we help every part that needs to be addressed.
Hi, Erin Hall Lewis. I'm a frequent contributor. I'm sure you're all sick of hearing from me. The thing that concerned me most from what I heard was, I'm sorry, Ms. Lankin, it was what you said. You said, we can't do it in Pasco. You said it several times. You know what else you can't do? You cannot pass a levy after a strike. It just doesn't happen. You're just gonna have to accept the fact that after you have a strike, you're gonna lose levy. That didn't happen here. I think in large part due to an amazing group of people who are teachers and community members, parents, administrators, people who really, really do care about this city. And I think that you underestimate them when you say things like, well, we just can't do that in Pasco. It brings to mind the quote, if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're right. I think that what you decide to do and what you're determined to do is much more likely to be a predictor of success than what's happened in the past. I worry that we put the elementary schools first because they are crowded without considering the impact to those students 6 years down the road. These kids that are going to have a much improved experience in elementary school because we relieve overcrowding there will have a diminished experience in middle school if we don't address that crowding, and then even more of a diminished experience in those really important years before they hit careers in high school. I think that when you only address the elementary schools, you're sacrificing the future of the whole community at the expense of those kids. I think that you look at it and you say, well, this is going to be the easiest thing to pass. Yes, it's going to be the easiest thing to pass. But you know what else isn't easy? Getting 2 major subjects in curriculum chosen and implemented in 1 year. I've been to so many of these meetings where you guys described this as a heavy lift. The people involved said, it's a heavy lift. The committee members said, this is a heavy lift. And they did it because they were determined to be able to do it. It's easy right now to choose a cheap option that addresses immediate concern, but it's also, for instance, very easy to not address curriculum for over a decade and then force a very heavy lift on the community and teachers and students. I worry that we look at what's easy because it is easy in the short term, but it's a detriment to the long-term wealth, welfare, happiness, and success of Pasco as a whole when you don't look at what's going to happen to those kids when they finally hit those formative years later on. There is no such thing as a school where you don't need more space in Pasco right now. But if you don't have the courage and the vision to be able to trust your community, to look ahead and see what you need, and to have them in return trust you to make those decisions, yeah, we can't do it in Pasco. Thank you.
So what I said we can't do is I said we can't build a smaller school. I said we can't build a 500 capacity school when we open up, just like that if we open up a 500 capacity school, when that school is opened, it's already filled capacity. Like we're already looking at Curry that just opened up, that they're already looking at adding additional classrooms because it's too small already.
Yep, and in specific instances, you're definitely going to be right. But when you say over and over again, we can't do it in Pasco, it doesn't really matter what you're applying it to. It puts this banner over the community that, well, in Pasco, you can't do it. Somewhere else you could. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. I think that having the attitude in general or in specific instances is kind of a bad idea.
That we need bigger schools?
I think that we just need to trust Pasco to be able to do what's right instead of deciding that already they're going to tell you no unless you give them the penny pinching option. I think in the study session somebody said penny wise, dollar poor.
Mr. Lehrman brought up he's done some research on smaller elementary schools in different districts and found that you can build very similarly cost elementary schools, build 2 rather than 1 at very similar costs and still provide the same amount of student space. So that's definitely something I feel like we need to put a task force on because we need to define the values of Pasco and what we want. And nationwide, we are going to smaller schools. We are, because, and not even, I've looked at the research, can't find a lot of research on, I can find lots of research on the benefits and negatives to bigger schools and the benefits and negatives to littler schools, but across the board, a really big high school and a really big elementary school, or excuse me, junior high, I looked at secondary, it's a little different with elementary school. We're not talking about that right now, but with secondary and high school, you give and you lose some. Bill Gates did 24 schools, made them small. English scores went up, math scores went down in these 24 schools. It's a give and take, but communities and families like a smaller school better. So, and so I think it's important to define our values, see what it costs, see what the things are. Should we be building these elementary schools 2 to 1 at approximately the same cost? So I think
exactly.
I think that is definitely something that we as Pasco will look into because it's important.
Yeah, and doing it now instead of kicking the can down the road, which is really very easy to do. Trust the community.
I want people to understand too, I am very fiscally conservative. A lot of the people I talk to, one person opened up with, I am very fiscally conservative. I turned down the bond in 2011 because it was too aggressive. But something needs to be done, and I would support this. And a lot of my fiscally conservative friends would support this bigger bond. And that's part of what fueled that, right now with really low interest rates, and an economy that's doing relatively well, it could possibly be our last chance to do that. We don't know what it's going to look like in 4 years, but I don't think interest rates are going down. So that's a bigger bang for our buck by doing it now.
It's me again. Superintendent Whitney, Board President Lehrman, and the board, I implore you to move away from our past practice of let's Band-Aid it with a portable. Let's Band-Aid with a portable. Let's be forward, be brave, put up the brick and mortar. Let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's put those buildings up. We need elementary schools now. We talk about passing time. It is a fine oiled machine to move 800 children through a building in under 5 minutes. You can evacuate, you can move kids through a hallway, you can do amazing things in a small amount of time. Our transition times, 400 children passing through the halls. It's very quiet. It is amazing when you teach those standards, those expectations, kids are fine at their jobs. So let's be bold, let's be brave, let's get those elementary schools where we need them, and let's look to the future. Thank you.
I may be alone. Worrying about an impact for students 6 years down the road. They're being impacted today. So, as Christy said, we need to do this now. If you care about these students, don't wait 6 years down the road. We'll cross that bridge when we get close to it. But they're being impacted today. So let's do something about it.
Yes, I just want to make sure I understand what you're supporting and not, because we have kids that are being reflected in McLaughlin by size. I guess I just didn't capture what you're supporting, not supporting. I know you're all from Curie, so you want
Yes.
Curie addition, but.
Yeah, certainly a Curie option, and also taking advantage of the most bang for our bucks, 100% of matching dollars instead of 22%. It's easier for me to convince somebody that this option is the best option or the best bang for your buck.
So you like E with Curie?
Option. Well, I want to get my supporters on the east side as well as the west side to look fiscally exactly at what Mr. Lehrman was saying. He's looking at numbers. Numbers made sense. He actually asked somebody if they would entertain a motion, but it was interrupted in discussion, so we lost that opportunity. So.
Sure.
Sure, sorry. I would say that when we look at our district as a whole, for years, we've kind of operated as that status quo, and we haven't, decisions have been made based on small populations, and I think we really need to look at what's best for the whole group. And I think definitely we need elementary schools. We need large elementary schools because we have large populations of kids. Building's not stopping. They're going to build to the rivers. They're building out north. They're coming. We've built it. They're here. We have to contend with it now. Lowering class size is important. You think of the foundational skills that children are given in elementary school. If we can start closing those gaps now, think of what we can do in the future. Think of what happens when they get to middle school, when they get to high school. Let's look at the future now. I understand we need middle schools. We need high schools. If we could, I'm sure if each one of us could just press the magic button, the easy button, we would have them built. But I do support the previous task force work, and I respect their work. I respect their opinions, and I understand that we also have to respect the opinion of needing a middle school. I get that. We need a high school, definitely. New Horizons, definitely. We have all of these things we need to do. What can we do now to stop the hemorrhaging? When our elementary schools are being bused across town, here and there, families moved to different schools because we simply don't have room, that's a huge issue. I understand it's overcrowded at McLaughlin, but they're housed there. They're not going to siblings to different buildings across town. That's a huge issue. And it doesn't just happen at Curie. It doesn't just happen on the east side. It happens on the west side of town. Kids are being moved because we can't house what we have. And I think we need to address that first and foremost.
Okay, I'm still dumb. So, but you're saying E, but with Curie, because you work at Curie, right?
I do, yes. Definitely E. And whatever the previous task force,
What was that? I've looked at it. Actually, I do have the list, but what do
there
you
was
mean?
a whole laundry list of things. 7 items.
Basically, it's E.
Very similar?
It is E.
Well,
E without Curie is what.
Well, and the other
E, and then Curie would be in addition. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. The task force did not suggest Curie.
E takes care of the 7 recommendations from the task force. Curie's in addition to that.
Curie would be in addition.
So C would take care of 6 of the recommendations then, exchanging the middle school based on what's happened since the task force met. Would that be a fair statement? Because they're exactly the same except for the 17th middle school, or elementary school, excuse me. So the only change would be, yeah, you can sit down, is the middle school for that. Everything else is the same. So that's the question. I mean, this is really what the discussion is. Do we want one more elementary school on this bond or the 4th middle school? And I'm sorry that I was slow to grasp all your comments, but that's the question, right? Because that's the only difference between these bond options. And then if we're going to add Curie or add Chiawana classrooms, which I've already said I would support.
Or the bigger bond that has both.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that one's too big personally. But so in my mind, it's do we want 2 elementary schools and Stevens, or do we want an elementary school, Stevens, and a 4th middle school? So go ahead, Mr. Grimm.
I was gonna let someone else go. Good evening, Superintendent Whitney, Board President Lehrman, and board members. I've expressed some opinions this evening, and I would just like to give you guys what I think are the high points. I think you should follow the task force recommendations. An unintended consequence of not doing that would be to have people question whether they want to participate on future task force, because why am I going to work on it if they're not going to listen to what I said? I think we have a responsibility to capitalize on sunk costs at Curie and Chiawana. I also think that some of these schools and the sizes, I don't know what they are, but we have some elementary designs. 2 different ones are very similar. So you can leverage the fact that there is already elementary designs that, while it might not get you to the 72,000 square feet, I don't know what the sizes are. I think something else that the board must do is maximize the state match while getting the biggest bang for the taxpayers' buck. We also have to focus on the current needs. If we have current overcrowding, we need to address that. Yes, we will have overcrowding in middle schools. We're gonna have to run another bond. We're either gonna run a bond and build a middle school or build more elementary schools. In the meantime, as taxpayers and a district, we have to house the elementary kids, and it doesn't matter that we have to house middle school kids in 6 years. We have to house them now. So we're either gonna put them in portables, which is twice the life cycle cost of the brick and mortar school. Probably 75% of the capital cost right out of the gate. So we gotta house them. It doesn't matter. We gotta build elementary schools. You can either do a super bond and put in 2 elementary schools, Stevens, and an additional middle school, plus all the improvements and the other category. If that's what the people are saying they want, give it to them. They'll tell you at the ballot box. Unfortunately, like Board Member Phillips said, we don't know what is going to happen in the next presidential election. We don't know what the economic climate's going to do. I would think that we want to do something now. I'm all for focusing on our current needs and focusing on the future in a year or two or whenever. The other option is to run a super bond. The last bond that we ran, what was the rate per thousand?
The one that passed?
Yep.
So now you're asking some interesting questions. So I don't know what the rate was. I can tell you what the target rate was $2.50. So
now we're talking about stuff that's 50 cents and we're scared?
Well, $2.50 was the total rate, right? And
I'll say, our taxes for per the bond raised from $2.21 in 2013 to $2.53 in 2014. Is that, Mr. Nunemaker,
that's what I'm asking.
approximately 32 cents?
And so your option with, your biggest option has a tax rate of 36 cents, or is that the wrong one?
No, there's a bigger option.
58 cents.
So at the super bond, someone said 51 cents. Is that right?
Yeah, so
why are we not putting out a bond for $1.50?
because we want to pass it.
Building a high school.
There's a limit. Our value, we can't run a bond more than like 125 million because there's a formula. So we can only go so high for the amount of the bond.
Shoot for the stars.
Hey, I'd support that myself. Amen. But I don't think our community would. So you made some great points, Mr.
But you're
Grimm.
not going to make everyone happy.
I agree. But let's make as many people happy as possible and find a compromise that the most people can support, that we can pass it. So, but I
We
wanted
have to build elementary schools because that's where we're currently overcrowded.
I agree. That's number one priority. I wanted to
We
just
can't start to put out fires that haven't started yet.
Yeah, I just want to bring up the task force thing just because, so everyone understands if they haven't participated or heard of task force. So we received a letter from one of the task force member that's been part of the since 2010. He shared kind of the projects, and the first 7 projects are the other category, which is security, upgrade, safety, elementary school 16, rebuild Stevens, elementary 17, rebuild Livingston, rebuild McGee, middle school 4. Now, how many people here would support rebuilding Livingston and rebuilding McGee ahead of a 4th middle school? Additionally, the Curie classrooms and the Chiawana classrooms, which other board members have supported, are not high on that priority list. So we're saying we're agreeing to move around in some scenarios, but not in others. The option C honors the task force, that we're making one change, and that's moving the 4th middle school a little bit higher based on data we have since the task force convened. Just like we're doing with the other things. This task force member, just a sec, this task force member also said, I had a possible addition could be a wood shop, metal shop, auto shop complex for Chiawana because right now they travel to Pasco. I thought that was a great idea. Now, am I just going to say, nah, sorry, the task force didn't say that, so I'm not even going to consider it until we reconvene the task force and see if they would support that. We have to take all the data we have currently and make the best decision. We're not going to be tied to something exactly that occurred over a year ago. So much has happened in the last year. The option C keeps 6 of the 7. This one keeps 7 of the 7. We've already shared that we can modify the level of importance of some of these items. And so that's what I think C does.
Does it address our current overcrowding in elementary schools?
It does. The first project is elementary school 16. The most crowded situation right now is in the West Side elementary schools, Angelo, Livingston, Twain. That would relieve crowding at those 3 schools. I would support adding Curie classrooms to relieve some of the crowding, which is not as bad, but there is some in the East Side schools. Additionally, we're opening a facility in the fall in Central Pasco that will also relieve some of the crowding at the central schools. So in my mind, we're addressing the option C addresses the most urgent issues, and it has foresight in adding the 4th middle school. I agree. The most important issue is another elementary school to relieve some of the overcrowding, and I feel like option C does that. I would support adding Curie to it. We're already going to build renovate the senior center, and that's going to relieve some crowding in the central Pasco. And if it's not sufficient, we could run another bond in 2 years and add another couple elementary schools if we don't get funding, which I think we will in the next year from the state. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Grimm, do you have anything else? I was going to let Mr. Nunemaker, looks like.
I just wanted to find out or have someone tell me what the current situation is. I think you mentioned it earlier, but I've forgotten. With K through 6, middle school, 6, 7, and then high school. What's the current?
Enrollment?
Yes, enrollment versus how?
Now, I can tell you, so there's a formula used to calculate our match. That's one way of looking at the situation. Other people can come up with other calculations. But what I was saying was the way that we figure out how much state match we can get, they have K to 6. It doesn't matter your configuration of grade levels. They just look at K to 6. For every K to 6 student that you have in your district, they figure you need 90 square feet for each K to 6 student. They figure you need 117 square feet for each 7th and 8th grader. So they multiply your enrollment in K6 by 90, your enrollment in 7-8 by 117. And that's the numbers I was saying earlier. By that calculation, they say that we should, with our 785,000 square feet of K6 space, we should be able to house 8,700 students. We have 10,128, so we're 1,400 over their calculation. You look at the middle school, per OSPI's calculation, in our 341,000 square feet of middle school space, multiply or divide that by 117 square foot per student, and we should be able to house 2,915 students. We have 2,644 enrolled.
Okay.
One way to look at it.
So we need 2 elementary schools. That's what the numbers say.
Based on OSPI numbers, again, those are the formulas.
That's not far off from, I looked up the per square foot figures, and those are not far off from industry information. So we need 2 elementary schools. We need a middle school down the road, yes. Your option is to build 2 elementary schools or give them a super bond. Thanks.
You know, just for interesting facts, McLaughlin, if we take the brick and mortar classrooms currently in the classrooms, McLaughlin has 26 students per classroom. This is what our elementary schools look like. Livingston, 40, almost 41, Twain, 32, Angelo, McGee, 32, Angelo, 29, Markham, 28, Emerson, 28, and Frost, 28. I rounded a little bit on those. So that's what brick and mortar classrooms, that's how the overcrowding is for brick and mortar. Those classes have portables, and so there's not as many, as that but that's the overcrowding. So we do have, that Frost, Emerson, Markham, Angelo, McGee, Twain, and Livingston, as Livingston being the most overcrowded by that scale. There's lots of different scales that we look at for overcrowding. McLaughlin has 26.3 per classroom, Stevens 15, Ochoa 17.
I want to make a quick comment on the OSPI calculations and the formulas they offer. So the OSPI is the same group that decided to send $50 million to Kennewick and none to a lot of other districts. It's the same group that has predicted that our growth would decrease every year, and they've been off for 15 years. So I appreciate their work and their information, but they're not right. They're always wrong, and that's because they don't figure in certain factors that are unique to our community. One thing that they've really struggled with that messed up their Super SCAP funding was how they figure portables into their formula, and they really messed that up. And after they messed it up, they met with the districts that were left out, and there were a lot of upset districts. It wasn't just us. It was, how many were at that meeting, Mr. Christensen? 10? In different districts?
I wasn't.
Were there. So they had a meeting that who in our district went to that? Mr. Nunemaker, how many districts were there?
Oh, there was 10, 12 districts at least.
Okay. with the same complaints as we had, that your calculations, your formula was way off in the way you distributed this. So I don't have much faith in OSPI right now. They're going to get a new leader. I don't know if they'll fix the formulas, but they've been wrong for 10 years about Pasco. So I'll take their information. I take that as part of what I would consider, but there's so many other things to consider as well.
Did you have something else to add, Mr. Nutmaker?
Just the question on what the last bond rate was advertised at. It was 34 cents per thousand. Actual rate's been at about 28 cents.
Thank you.
Mr. Lehrman, over here in the,
yes.
in the corner.
Yes.
I need to caution the board to please not survey members of the audience with regards to the bond options, or we may be in violation of PDC regulations.
Thank you, Ms. Thornton.
Just as a note, the city has also stated that we weren't going to have any growth either. I mean, the city has said for the last 15 years that we weren't going to grow. So that's been part of the.
Oh, it was a huge mistake.
So we're not going to grow, we're not going to grow.
Exactly.
So
If anyone wants to get involved in other things, impact fees, that's another area we could help address our growth. When we had that discussion, I propose increasing that. If we're going to add houses, we've got to help. They've got to realize they have to contribute to school. I was reamed for that. I was absolutely reamed. The homeowners association or the home builders came and spoke here and attacked me.
Let's move on and let the community, and we'll have additional board discussion if anybody wants to talk. Any other community or audience comments?
So can I just make a comment here, Ms. Thornton? I think while we can't survey, that doesn't mean that you can't suggest a preferred option, okay? So just for clarification.
Hi, I'm Wendy Castañeda. I teach at Marie Curie, and we thank you that you guys are considering adding back Curie. I also am a parent at Curie with my student. I live in West Pasco. I'm a taxpayer here in Pasco, but we as voters, we want to know where our money goes. And if we need elementary schools, I mean, it's going to be very hard for me as a teacher and a community member to go and tell my parents to vote for this bond if they're not seeing anything, if everything's going to the west side. You know, so we want Curie to continue the growth. I have parents that pick up children at 3 schools on the east side. We have some space at Ochoa for anybody that is in McLaughlin that would like to bus their kids. We would welcome them. They have great education there too. But we just thank you that you guys are considering Curie, and we want our voters to see where their tax money is going to, and if we're meeting the needs, we're gonna get more support. Thank you.
So I think the attractive thing on option E here is elementary school 17. We haven't specified where that would go. That's for district staff, if they want to involve community to make a recommendation to the board on where that need is. That could be the space over on the east side, Curie, and any other schools. But all options need to be weighed there and looking at that, but that's just additional space. And some board members have confidence in SuperSCAP, some don't. Some SuperSCAP, when we say that, is actually taking and getting the money, additional monies and additional matches that Kennewick got. So if we did get that, elementary 17 could be 2 elementary schools or 3. But those are big ifs, so we haven't put them on the option here.
I think your point you're trying to make is that you can't promise your friend that that's going to be in the east side. It may be in the north. Franklin just added 6 portables. I mean, the growth, if you drive down Sandifer, is huge. So I wouldn't make any promises to people where those would go. The 16, we do already have a site. They're the most overcrowded. We've already started the design. So let's just be really specific. That's not designated to go anywhere. So don't make any promises if this is what's on the bond that will be on the east side, because that may not be where the need is greatest.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson. That is good clarification.
Rebecca Richardson, kids at Franklin. We are crowded everywhere. I think it's not very fair to say, oh, we need to do it where there's crowding, because there's crowding everywhere, right? We can't undermine that middle school is crowded, or at least our school in Mac is well, it's not like my school, but it's on the west side. And, it is overcrowded. And we have the 3 most recent, kids who were in, maybe not McLaughlin, but in middle school saying, yeah, you need a new middle school. It stinks to go to middle school when it's so overcrowded. And I mean, look at just the little experiences that were mentioned at the school board this meeting just now. In Maya, they had an opportunity to relieve some of their crowding, and they were like, no, let's keep us together. Let's keep us together. We were in McGee, which was at one point the most overcrowded elementary school because it had double the capacity or a little bit over double the capacity. And pick up and drop off was a little bit crazy. You had to, kind of wade through the masses at the end of the day. And I mean, a lot of things were harder, not just pick up, but I think the challenges are different, and middle school is a very hard time. Kids are getting a little bit older and more independent, and they're going through a lot of changes, just growing up, and I think it's hard to be reduced to a number when you're in middle school. Mr. Grimm, you mentioned how portables are just a horrible investment, and portables should not be put at Curie. I totally support that because I don't like portables either. And I think we look at portables in Pasco as kind of permanent things. And so once it's there, oh my gosh, is it ever going to leave? So I totally agree. And I think the Curie edition would be great. But I think it's kind of ungenerous of you to then look at McLaughlin Middle School and say, oh, they're fine. Oh, they're not overcrowded. Half of their schools.
Let's make our comments to the board, please.
Okay. Well, half of McLaughlin's classrooms are portables, or very little bit under half of them are in portables, and it's, I mean, and the teachers, some teachers like it. Oh, it's outdoors, it's fresh air. But kids who have to run from a portable all the way to the other side of the school, or they don't have time to put their back books in the lockers, walking through the hallway. It's crazy in elementary school. It's crazy in whatever you're in. It's crazy. But elementary school kids, I mean, maybe I'm splitting hairs here, sorry. But I'm thinking, you're with a teacher and you're going in a straight line and your 30 class kids are all going together, okay? So it's a little bit more, I know you guys are gonna be like, it is not, it's a little bit easier maybe to keep the control when you're in a middle school. It's all those kids in your class right now, they're gonna go in different directions. And so it is more chaotic. I feel like, it is a problem. The other point I want to address, and again, we are crowded everywhere. And so I'm not going to say, our overcrowding is more and that's not overcrowded, because we are. Everyone's overcrowded, and no one likes to be on an art cart. And we missed out on our art room for 2 years, and that stinks. I think we have it this year. But everyone's overcrowded. But what did we do in the past? What was our last bond? All elementary schools. All elementary schools. And what is this bond? We know it's going to have one elementary school for sure, so we're still helping our elementary people. We've got the SPED Senior Center renovation, which is going to alleviate more elementary schools. And those are guaranteed. As far as what other extra money we're getting, that's not guaranteed. But we are alleviating classes through the Senior Center renovation. We are going to alleviate classrooms with the new elementary school additions. We're adding maybe 200 enrollment with the Stevens renovation, but that's it. I feel like we can't put all of our eggs in the elementary school basket. We are overcrowded everywhere. We're overcrowded east and west, and we're overcrowded at all different levels. And so why have two bonds in a row focused primarily on elementary school? We just had one bond that was all for elementary school. It didn't do anything for middle or high school. And so I think it's just the right thing to kind of, when everyone's overcrowded, to kind of work a little bit here, work a little bit here. I think we're still primarily focused on elementary schools, because like I said, we had the elementary, the senior center, we're adding a little bit to McLaughlin, and if we do the Curie edition, that's more that will help the elementary school. So I just think, we can't always rely on numbers and data from outside people telling us, oh, well, this is what, you should be growing and this is what you need. We have to look at what our situations are like. McLaughlin's had 30 portables for a long time, a long time. And that's been good enough for them. Why is it good enough for them and yet, not acceptable for other areas? And I just think it's really hard. I live on the west side, and I might get in a lot of trouble by saying this. I'm a white woman. Not that won't get me in trouble. Obviously, I'm a white woman. But if I was to say something like, well, I'm not going to vote for something that doesn't help me, do you know what I'd be called? Racist. I've been called that. Aaron made a comment that he spoke up about impact fees, and there was an awful letter written to him, and it was insulting to our whole family. And he made assumptions about things, and it's just not right. We are Pasco. We need to help Pasco, and I want to help Curie as much as I want to help McLaughlin. I don't even have kids in McLaughlin. I may never have kids in McLaughlin, but what is right for our community is right for our community. What helps one person helps another. Maybe not directly, maybe not in the same way, but it's the right thing to do. It should be right regardless of how closely it impacts you. Thank you.
If I could just say one thing. I love numbers. I'm a math guy, so I really love numbers. And so to me, the elementary school thing, I get it. I see it. And I'm like, numbers, great. It fits. It makes sense. But when those numbers are put with what they actually are as students, I feel like what Jesus said earlier in the beginning with about those McLaughlin kids that came in, that to me is what education is about. Those students, you can tell that they are inspired, that they have something that they were able to find and to really attach to and were able to go for that. And I feel like in a middle school where you go through so many different, one teacher will go through way more students than just one set elementary school teacher. Even if they have that 40 students, which is a giant class size, they still have that one teacher for that with those same 40 students. But in middle school where you have that time, there are those leaders, and I agree with Jesus that there are those students that might just feel like a number in those middle schools. And it's been mentioned before, there's kids that aren't making sports team because there's not enough space. And that's just crushing dreams and crushing hopes of kids. And I feel like when we think about education, numbers are great, but I think those dreams and those aspirations of kids is way more important than just numbers and space.
So before Ms. Grimm speaks, can I get people raise their hand if they still wish to speak tonight and they haven't spoken yet?
I just have a clarifying
All right,
question.
you can go, Ms. Grimm.
I just have a clarifying question. Between Whittier and Curie's block, there's 1,400 kids housed, basically, right? 800 and 600. Have we looked at that option at Franklin? Is there a way to do the sister schools kitty corner and take up a block? Are there other chunks of land in our district that we can do that to alleviate some of our crowding? Have we looked into that?
Oh, yeah. I can comment, but I feel like I've said too much. Someone else want to explain what the district did?
So 2 years ago, when we were looking at boundaries, we've got McClintock there and looked at doing that there at that time.
Yeah, they're not the same property. That's the difference.
Sure.
The block separated.
Now there is another property there right beside Franklin that was originally purchased as 40 acres, and then when the middle school bond didn't pass, then it was split, and part of it became Franklin. I don't know that anything's been done. I think that our experience as a board, I'll speak for myself, my experience as a board member last time when that came up, that did not seem very favorable in that area. Now, it might work at Curie. Hopefully it's working well, but it doesn't seem to be something that is preferred there. So are we looking at that at this point? I've not heard anything. I'm not considering it. Might it come at a future point? Don't know.
Might a task force recommend it? Maybe, we'll see.
No, we've already talked, we looked at it, and it's the amount of traffic with having those three schools within one block would be impossible. We have discussed that, board. Anyways,
The same land is what I'm talking about.
yeah. So I want to point out that it was what the board and the district did with McClintock and Franklin, and what they did with Angelo is a perfect example of how they listened to the community. The community said, I know your numbers and your ideas say this. I know you want to do what you did at Whittier and Curie here, but that doesn't work for the people that affects. Angelo was the same way. They're like, we would rather have 900 kids at our school than to have you rebound our school. We're okay being big. It's a little crowded with the extra portables, but please just leave us how it is. And they listened. Okay, this is our opportunity to do the right thing, listen to the community, and take all the data and information and swallow our pride and just do what the right thing is for our community and what they want. So.
My name is Heather Kubalik, and I have kids at McLaughlin and Franklin. And I just wanted to say I came in late, so I missed some of the discussion, but I think it's option C is what I would agree with. But having the middle school of Stevens and a fourth middle school, and then the other. And just one comment on it is, as everyone said, everything's overcrowded. We need help everywhere. But looking at the time it takes to build these schools, you're cranking out elementary schools in a year and a half. Middle schools are 3 years. So if we don't get a middle school on this bond, it's going to be way down the road when it's finally built. If we get a middle school on this bond, in 2 or 4 years, we can do another bond, get that elementary on then, and we'd have them all much sooner than waiting on the middle school. So that's one of the reasons I would like to see the fourth middle school now, because they just take so much more time to actually get them ready for students to be in. Thank you.
You know, my big concern is that we desperately need 2 elementary schools. I just don't think we can get away with 1. And we have a community that is screaming for another middle school. And it's not just here. It's not the people who always come here. I have asked questions of principals that are very in favor of another middle school. I've asked them of teachers that are very in favor. And people who are so fiscally conservative, farmers that say, you know what, we feel like this is the time. The interest rates are low. We are at a huge bond with option D. Can you pull up D again? But D addresses all those things. And with the fact that we can get, especially if we make the middle school smaller and we reduce that by 14 or 12 million, and it puts it, and that was my estimate, it would put that bond lower than 100 million. I think we could pass option D. And we'd get 2 middle schools, then we might even get a possible 3 with the super SCAP, which we could absolutely use, and solve some problems because I think somebody made the thing, my neighbors don't want to do this. It's like bond. Let's do something like this. And our next bond, let's put a high school on it. You know, I think there's so much energy in the community behind another middle school, and so much energy in the community behind overcrowding. Let's do this as a community. Let's pass this bond.
Additional board discussion before I entertain a motion? The community audience comments, anybody else? One more?
I just want to clarify, I'm against all portables, not just at Curie. Well, no, honestly, from a construction management, project management standpoint, you're looking at 50 to 75% of the capital cost of brick and mortar for something that's going to last half as long and is a maintenance nightmare. So portables are just, the reason they go is because they're quick, and so they can be done in a summer, and so you can increase capacity fast, and people try to say they're cheap.
Temporary.
Right. And the people try to say they're cheap, but they're not cheap. I've done studies. I work at Hanford. I've studied it 3 or 4 different times. but we end up in the same situation where it's schedule and capital funding. So I don't support any portables anywhere ever.
We hear you. I think
Yes.
we haven't had public discussion on this. We probably need to. I've heard things from each board member on portables. So we probably need to set something up to have public discussion as a board and set high-level direction before a portable purchase comes up next year.
And our superintendent has informed us that we can remove portables, and that's going to happen, and we can move them. So,
Whoa. What I said is it's possible for them to be moved, and should that be direction from the board and the task force, that we absolutely would follow through with those recommendations.
yeah, well, I kind of got the impression that if we need them moved, we're going to move them. And if we need them gone, we're going to get rid of them. So that was the impression I got. And so that's from the task force, that's directed. But I think that's where this community wants to go. We don't need 200 portables. We need our kids in brick and mortar classrooms, and the culture is changing, and I don't know if we've removed or moved one portable in this district, and I really believe that's gonna change. I think, I would love to see portables moved temporarily to where they need, and which is why I'm not in favor of building onto CHS. It has 2,500 students. What is it? Almost 2,600 students. We are by far the biggest in the state. We build a school for 2,600 students. We will always have 2,600 students there. Let's move portables there temporarily, and let's build a high school in 6 years, and let's get rid of all of the portables at our high schools and make reasonably sized high schools.
Okay, we will have further discussion on that topic also. Is there any more community comment, audience comment? Any more board discussion? With no further board discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve option C as the February 2010 bond proposal.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Seeing no second, I would entertain a second motion.
Mr. President, I would move to approve alternative option E for board consideration.
I will second the motion.
There is a motion and a second to have the district implement option E. Can I get a roll call, please?
Well, we need to have discussion.
Oh, is there additional discussion? Sorry.
So, yeah, I want to just comment. I know that there are some who will be disappointed with this because it doesn't include a fourth middle school. I like what Ms. Lewis said. Hall Lewis. We are Pasco. We can do this. But if we're going to be successful with this bond or any bond, it's going to take all of us working behind it to get together or to move it forward. I'm not opposed to a new middle school, but I don't think now is the time. I believe we can come back after we've taken a look at the overall program, not just now, not just what's for the next bond, but put together some long-term projections on where we're going to be, and we all know the projections can change. But I believe we can come back and put a middle school on the bond at the right time. We'll know when that is with the work of this new task force, and I believe at that time, then we'll have a real basis to say, look, this is the direction that we want to go, and I believe that can happen rather quickly. So I understand there's going to be some who are disappointed with this, but I believe that for now, this is the best option. One thing I did not, so this option, we have not discussed adding Curie to this, and that was not in the motion.
Someone can, well, we have a motion and a second on the table. We could also, somebody could make a motion to add that, but I think first we need to take action on the motion on the table.
Well, you're having discussion right now, so I'd like to discuss that. As I've mentioned, I would support a bond with elementary school 16. I'm supportive of that. I'm supportive of Stevens being rebuilt. I always have been from the beginning. I'm supportive of the other projects, which I'll mention have been listed and will be listed very clearly exactly where all those dollars are going. And I would also be supportive of the Curie classrooms. I think it's a huge mistake to have elementary school 17 on this and not a fourth middle school. I'm not supportive of that. I think it's a bad idea. I think we would get additional funding for that 17th elementary school, and it's just a big mistake. So I'm not supportive of that. I'm disappointed in my fellow board members, honestly. So those are my feelings. I want to comment as well that what we say and the actions we take as board members do not necessarily mean what we can do privately. We related to bonds, we can be supportive and encourage and give of our free time outside of district resources, outside of our district provided email and devices to support bonds and encourage the community to support bonds. And I just want to clarify that. But our role here as board members is to make decisions that we feel are in the interest of our community and that represent our community, and that's our primary charge, is to represent our community. And I'm disappointed that I don't feel my fellow board members are doing that. I don't feel like this option does that, and those are my feelings.
Additional discussion?
So, boy, I'm going back to this Chiawana thing. I'll tell you. So we either add portables or we continue to suffer in that school, or we add permanent capacity. So there comes a point when we either accept portables, and part of the challenge with portables is we put them in and we never take them away. They are not temporary in our district. And I think that's something that we've either got to make up our mind that we're going to use them as temporary facilities, or we're going to get rid of them and build permanent. Personally, I think it was a mistake to move so many of our middle school students out, 6th grade out, and leave those portables there. I don't want to make Chiawana a big school. On the other hand, when we build a new high school, I would not like to see Chiawana full already upon building another high school. So at some point, we're going to have less than capacity in Chiawana High School. The question is, what is that capacity going to be? Is it going to be its current capacity? Is it going to be its current capacity plus 12 additional classrooms? Or is it going to be its current capacity now plus so many portables? I could go either way on this bond. It adds another $5 million. I know there's a need, as there is everywhere in our district.
I would be completely against adding portables. I don't agree with adding portables. Not only is it would take up it would take up space, make it more difficult for the students to get in through the classrooms. I mean, where that school was built to add on additional rooms. So
the problem is someday we're going to have to add portables to Chiawana, or we will never build another high school. So how many, is there 24 capable? We're capable to add 24?
Add 12. I think it was 24 was beginning
up to
at
24 total.
12 or 20.
So we're going to have a 3,000 person high school, and we're not going to build it. We have land for a high school. Already we have problems at Chiawana because it's so big. Kids getting cut from the sports teams because there's not enough people. We just have these problems. The community will not support building another high school until we have portables. I hate them too. I'd rather have stick built, but I want another high school because I feel like that's what's best for our community. So why put it off 6 years? Because, I'm trying to think of how much it takes to the 300 more that we would add. It looks like our high school is increasing by 300 people in approximately five years. We're just putting off another high school by at least 5 years, and we have land for it. So I want to get away from these mega schools. I hate the idea of, I have 2 children at Chiawana, and I'm going to have a bunch more. And I hate the idea of portables. I hate the idea they're going to be in portables. But I just don't think this community is going to support a new high school until we have portables. So we need, and I don't want to build a high school for 3,000 people.
Okay, so I think I would agree. I want to amend my motion to add, is it 6,000 square feet to Curie?
That's what the,
Classrooms.
Well, whatever. I'm not sure if we're going by classrooms, by square foot.
that's what the original bond was 6,000 square foot for Curry.
So I want to amend that previous motion, which would be alternative option E for board consideration with an additional 6,000 feet for Curie.
So there is a motion that bond scenario E with an additional 6,000 square feet of classrooms at Curie Elementary School be submitted to Pasco voters for a special election in February 2017. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There is a motion and a second to have bond scenario E with 6,000 square feet of elementary school classrooms at Curie be submitted to Pasco voters for a special election in February 2017. Can we get a roll call, Ms. Dunnigan?
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
No.
Ms. Lankin?
Yes.
Mr. Lehrman?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
All right.
I want to make something really clear here, and I think this is important, and I think it's important to take your time. We need more of everything. I know we didn't get a middle school on this bond, but we can't fail this bond because we didn't get a middle school. We pass this bond, we build it, we get a task force, we go back in 2 years, 4 years, whatever it takes, and we get a middle school. I support all 3 of these bonds. I was really, really hoping for option E. I still think that our community could have got, or is it option D? I still think our community would have passed it. I think that we could have gotten there, and I think we could have been there. But as it stands, we weren't going to build a middle school in there until August 2022, which could have changed, but we can still build one by then with another bond. So let's pass, because if we don't pass this one, we're in.
You can't encourage people to pass the bond. Let me just warn you.
Okay.
Is that?
Anyway, we need more, we need more opportunity. What we can do is we can get a task force, and we can bring up another bond, and we can correct this problem. But if we don't do this one, we're going to be in trouble.
All right, thank you. Motion carries that bond scenario E with an additional 6,000 square feet of classrooms at Curie Elementary School be submitted to Pasco voters for a special election in February 2017. The district will prepare that bond resolution for approval at our next meeting. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Those of you who are leaving, thanks for the lively discussion from the board, and thank you to Mr. Nunemaker, all district staff, for putting all these options together as the board continued to tussle with this decision. All right, next we have agenda item 11, the consent agenda. We have personnel, warrant approval, approval of schematic design for elementary school number 16, overnight student travel to the WASDA conference in Spokane, Washington, overnight student travel for out-of-state student travel for the Chiawana High School Marching Band to the Bands of American Northwest Regional Festival in Hillsboro, Oregon, approval of the Carl Perkins grant application and assurances statements for the 2016-2017 school year, Delta High School graduation date for 2017, overnight student travel for Chiawana High School, DECA Club to the Western Regional Leadership Conference in Seattle, Washington, and overnight student travel for the Pasco High School DECA Club to the Western Region Leadership Conference in Seattle, Washington. I'd entertain a motion.
So before we, I guess we can make a motion and discuss it.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Nunemaker, is he still here? Randy. So I apologize, I didn't ask these questions earlier, and I know we've discussed some of this. So I'm looking at this.
What are we looking at?
Sorry. This is the preliminary plan for elementary 16.
Schematic.
Oh. Okay.
I think it's preliminary layout, is that what whatever they're calling that. So this is 72,000 square feet. Is this basically the same as Curie?
Curie Elementary School.
Okay, so are we planning this so that we can add classrooms to it?
That's correct.
Okay. So yeah, all right. So we're not going to do that in the future, right? Don't answer that. I'm not, while I like that, I mean, I think it sounds good. I do think that we've got to get away from where we're going to add on space, because it costs money to add those things. And when we do that, it just makes it harder to add portables. At some point, we've got to get away from building these big schools. So the second thing is, I'm looking at this site plan, and I know this is a 25-acre site, and we've had some discussion. It's hard to see the boundaries here. Are we utilizing the full 25 acres on this?
No, we're not. On the south side of that 25 acres, it runs right along the irrigation canal.
Okay.
There's 5 acres that will border that irrigation canal, and then there's a street just above that the city's putting in. So there's 5 acres at the lower part of that will actually be property that the district will need to make a decision on what they want to do with it, whether they sell it, whether it becomes a park, whatever it ends up being. The primary part of the bulk of the site is going to be to the north side of that street, and that's where elementary 16 will be.
Yeah, okay. So I see this here, and I don't know if it's, I think you can probably put it on that board there so people can see what I'm referring to, but yeah, it's not real clear, but, okay, so, yeah, I mean, 25 acres for an elementary site is huge. It concerns me a little bit that we're, for whatever reason, we ended up with this size parcel. I don't know if there's anything we can do with that property, but I guess I'm relieved to see that we're not trying to utilize all 25 acres. I don't know that there's any value in that property there. I would expect that one day that canal will be a pipeline rather than a canal. I think they've done that with some other portions of that canal, and maybe that'll be useful property at some point, but glad to see that, and thanks for that clarification.
So the area, the property line runs to the north here, and then right down here to the south, it comes all the way down Road 84 and then mirrors the irrigation canal down here. This is a sewer line, and this is a street that the city of Pasco is putting in.
And we're basically giving them the whole street.
They're taking the street. And
Not
so
just half of
consequently, this property that's just below where it says the sewer easement, that property down here then becomes property that is available either for development, most likely just mirrored on the west side of Road 84, it's homes. That street continues on and it's homes there. So it could be sold to a developer, depends on whatever the board would direct us to do.
Very good, thank you.
Additional discussion? All right, there's a motion and second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Please call the roll, Ms. Dunnigan.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Lehrman?
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Lankin?
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips?
Yes.
Agenda item 12 is future agenda items.
So we'll be having a study session on the 25th for board legislative positions, and we'll also be having 2 reports. One's focused on data with All Day Kinder, and Mr. Bowles will also be sharing some of the action planning that happened as a result of the pre-K community forum. So we're already moving forward with those plans and creating action plans from that community forum, as well as a curriculum review, implementation and review update. Mrs. Suzanne Hall will be able to provide us information on the new curriculum review process.
All right, we have no executive session this evening, so thank you to everyone for attending, your interest in Pasco schools and your interest in the upcoming bond. Meeting adjourned.